Welcome to the Peaceful Worldschooling Podcast, featuring your host, Angela Harders. We're committed to cultivating a peaceful world beginning right in our own hearts and homes. Together, we believe that the world is our biggest and best classroom, and the people and places in it are our greatest teachers. So I invite you to join me on the adventure of a lifetime, beginning with a conversation that can change the world. Today's episode of the Peaceful Worldschooling Podcast is brought to you by the book Tales of a Toxic Teacher, Exposing the Cycles of Abuse Within Our Schools, written by Angela Harders. In this book, Angela shares some of the shocking experiences that happen behind the closed doors of a public school classroom and exposes some of the many abuses that take place in school, intentionally and unintentionally. And no one escapes unscathed. Tales of a Toxic Teacher will be available for purchase on Amazon.com on November 30th, 2021. You may also purchase signed copies from Angela's website, www.peacefulworldschoolers.com. Buy your copy today. Hello, and welcome to the Peaceful Worldschooling Podcast, where we are committed to cultivating a peaceful world beginning right in our own hearts and homes. My name is Angela Harders. I am a gentle parenting author, a special education teacher, and a proud worldschooling mother to two amazing kids, Sophia, who's 7, and Benjamin, who is 3. Today on the Peaceful Worldschooling Podcast, I have the privilege and honor of introducing you to an amazing woman named Serena Sutterfield. Thank you so much for joining us as we have a conversation that can change the world.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a firm believer in if we want to change the world, we have to go home and love our families first. And that's exactly what I think homeschooling and this alternative lifestyle does for us. So my name is Serena Sutterfield. I have 3 children, and they are 11, almost 13, and almost 16. And they know public school. So when we took them out of school and started homeschooling, it was like a shock for them. And at first they weren't really sure what they were going to do. But having started this journey at the end of 2019, doing it for a little while now, they're kind of coming into like their own groove and appreciating it for their own reasons. And I can't wait to get into it.
Me too. Can you share with us a little bit about what made you start considering homeschooling?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, we took them out of school at the end of 2019, and that was because that entire school year for them and the year prior to that, we were in 2 different school systems, having moved in the same area, but we were having the same issues. And these issues were along the lines of my children being bullied by other kids in school and adults not doing anything about it, to my oldest being bullied by an adult in school and nobody doing anything about it.
Wow, I am so sorry to hear that. And I wish that I could say that your story and your situation is unique, but unfortunately it is not.
No, it's not.
I'm a public school teacher myself, and actually I'm working on writing a book now called Toxic Teaching, and it talks exactly about what you just shared, how schools really are this toxic environment. And a lot of times we think about bullying between students and we're just like, oh, well, that's just like a common thing that kids go through. You know, we brush it off like, oh, that's just what kids deal with. But we really don't talk about the bullying that happens between teachers and children. And it is so damaging and so harmful. And I'm so sorry that your children had to experience that firsthand.
Yeah, and I appreciate you for that. And it really opened our eyes to a lot of things. So like we were just saying, between the adults and the students, we can talk about that first. Because I'm not sure which one of these issues was the biggest for me. You know, you get that whole mama bear mode when there's something going on with your kids.
Yeah.
And my oldest had come home from school one day to tell me that a substitute teacher had called her a liar. And then not only that, and didn't stop there, but went on to tell my daughter and this classroom that they were good for nothing, would never amount to anything, and that they were basically a waste of space.
Oh my gosh. Why
teach? Why be in a position to talk to children that way if you aren't one who maybe, you know, might not be the best to be in front of children?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's terrible. What a terrible thing to say.
And especially because they're at just such a young and impressionable age where these words matter and they stick with you. An adult told me I'm not good enough. That must be true, because adults, this person is in a position of authority over me, you know, and teachers have such a influence over mindset, I think, over anything else that these kids go through in school.
We do. You're absolutely right. And I think it does make it that much more harmful and damaging for children, because exactly what you said, teachers are in this position of authority, and it's kind of just assumed that, you know, teachers are right as the authority, and they don't really, kids don't have a right to question their teachers or to accuse them of abusive behavior. And it's extremely detrimental to children. I can't tell you how many adults, you know, when you ask adults what were some of like the most difficult times of your childhood, so many of them can point back to something that happened in school. Like something happened in school, whether it was with the students or with a teacher, that had a marked difference on their life in a negative way.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I'm so sorry, not only for your daughter, but also for the other students that had to experience
that. Yeah,
that.
for sure.
And how did you respond to that? I mean, as your daughter is sharing with you that this substitute is sharing these terrible things with not just her, but with the whole class, how did you as a mom respond to your child basically being verbally abused?
Well, basically, this was the straw that broke the camel's back as far as our decision, because all the other interactions had been between my children and other children. And so now when it got to this point with the teacher, that was it for me. And that was the day I handed in like their resignation. And I did not have words, to be completely honest, because I didn't trust myself to. So I let them know that it is the behavior of their faculty and staff that made this decision to homeschool my children very, very easy.
Wow. And so when you made that decision to pull out your children in homeschool, how did your children feel about that?
My younger two were fine with it, I guess. They were like, yay, I don't have to wake up at 6 o'clock. You know, they were much easier. My oldest, though, having had been in the system for a while, but being used to it, and so she was a little bit more resistant. She felt as if that classroom style learning was how she learned best. And so would push back on several things, you know, assignments and stuff that we would do here at home. But over this past school year, since we started unschooling this year, has been such a drastic change. And she is so much more open and accepting to this idea of not going back to public school. And she's found a way to make new friends. And she has like everything that she could ever want now, and attributes it to being able to be home from school.
Wow, I love that. And I heard that you said at the beginning, you know, your daughter kind of had this pushback with assignments. And you said something very interesting, that she felt like learning in the classroom was like the only, or the way that she learned best, I think is how you said it.
Yeah.
And it's so fascinating that you say that, because you're absolutely right. Like, you know, younger kids don't have all those years of kind of that indoctrination of this is what learning is supposed to look like. Right. But, you know, for older children, it really takes time to kind of get out of that mindset of like learning looks like this, learning looks like this worksheet, learning looks like someone else telling you what to do and what the objective is going to be, and it can be challenging to adjust, to that homeschooling lifestyle where you do have a little bit more freedom over what and how and where and when you learn.
Yeah.
And so I know you said at the beginning that you kind of used assignments, but now you're an unschooling family. I'm wondering, how did you discover unschooling? Because I had never heard of unschooling until a couple of years ago. How did you discover that?
So there's a TV show on Netflix. I wouldn't necessarily maybe call it a show. It's just a couple of episodes, and I didn't expect this question. I can't remember the name of the show, but Zac Efron and some other guy are like the hosts, and they travel around the world and they experience like these different cultures. And there was this one episode that they had done, and I think they were in Costa Rica. And there was this school that they had set up there that was full of children of all ages. And as they were walking through and speaking with the adults about how can you teach a 7-year-old in the same classroom that you're teaching a 12-year-old, how does that work? Mm-hmm. And these women went on to explain that this learning is child-led, that the older students help the younger students, which in turn is helping the older students, and just this whole dynamic of it. And I was like, that's it. This is what we're doing. This is amazing and wonderful. And it has been, I'm sure I'm not doing it the way that they're doing it, but the way that we're doing it works for us right now.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And that is the point of unschooling, that you find something that works for you and your family and you go with it, Yeah. I'll have to look up that show so I can make sure to include it in the show notes so that anyone who's listening, if they want to check it out, they can see that. But that's really cool that they were able to see this kind of child-led learning happening in action. And I know a lot of people, when they hear the term unschooling, I know for me, it was really like off-putting, I was like, unschooling. That just sounds like
nothing.
Chaos, it just sounds like chaos everywhere. So I like, that people have these other ways of describing unschooling, like child-led learning, like you mentioned. We call it life learning, or the name of my podcast, Peaceful Worldschooling. That was a term that I came up with because I felt like Peaceful Worldschooling really encompassed more what we were standing for rather than what we were standing against.
Yeah, I like that.
And yeah, me too. So I'm wondering, what does unschooling mean to you?
So I love this question because, and like you said before, being stuck in the mindset and like almost indoctrinated into this is how we learn. We have it's all over our lives. Okay. And so unschooling to me means that my kids get to discover who they are for real without the peer pressure and like being surrounded by, all the other kids and everything else. So if my daughter wants to wear like a silly t-shirt, she's not going to get made fun of for it. Or right after the pandemic, my other daughter shaved her eyebrows off because she wanted to, so she didn't have to, so she can do these things without the risk of being bullied or picked on or made fun of. They can be free to express themselves, to learn about the things that they're interested in, and ultimately develop their lives in the best way for them. Because I am not trying to create small versions of myself, which is a whole new realization for me, by the way. With the whole unschooling thing, is like, wait a second. They are individuals and they need to learn and grow in their own way and in their own space.
I love that you said that. That's just brilliant. Like, I'm not trying to create smaller versions of myself. What a powerful parenting statement right there, And that's so brilliantly said. I'll have to like make a mug that says that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's just it. You're absolutely right. Like, a lot of times we kind of have this idea that, we're creating smaller versions of ourselves, and no, like, our children are unique with their own unique gifts and talents and interests that are different than mine and just as important as mine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So what are your children interested in?
Okay, so let's start with my oldest. Her name is Kara, and she will be 16 soon. She's in the 10th grade. They still like to go by their grade levels because when people ask them out in public, what grade are you in? And they say that they don't go to school, people all like look at them like they have 3 heads. So
Yeah.
she just says 10th grade. Her major interests are science and math. She's extremely gifted in both like the science side of your brain, but also the creative side of your brain. So she likes to learn and explore the functional world in a creative way, because this is not something that she could do while she was in school. And a quick example of that is when she was in public school, her worst class to sit through that I fought with teachers over was history. She just did not like history. It was not interesting to her. She would hurry up and she would do her work, and she always got good grades, but because she would rush through her work, she would open a book and want to read instead. And the teacher would always, that was not acceptable. So in order for yes, it was not acceptable. She was to just sit there quietly.
So she would finish her work quickly and the teacher would be upset that she was voluntarily reading a book.
Yes, and still get top marks as well.
Wow. I have students that I would pay them to read a book.
Yeah. So this lady, it wasn't how she ran her classroom, and that's fine. But we had a lot of like pushback with this one subject. So now she is taking an art history class online because she loves art, so much, and she's able to learn about history through learning about art. So right now she's learning, she's going chronologically, but she'll take a time period and think about all the different great like artists that came up and emerged, all the great thinkers and all the great but she's learning about like one time period at a time. So she's learning everything that she needs to learn in a way that's interesting to her.
That's so wonderful. And you said she's taking a course online. Yes. Can you share with us a little bit more about any, if there's a particular resource that you're using to implement that?
Sure. So Khan Academy, do you know it?
I do. I love Khan Academy.
Khan Academy is so wonderful. And when we can't find what we need at the library to explore our interests, Khan Academy is really great at explaining and going through lessons and the videos that they make and everything. So also with Khan Academy, my daughter is able to get that sitting at the desk and being taught by a teacher feeling while being at home.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I'll make sure that I include the link for Khan Academy if anyone is not familiar. They are an absolutely wonderful resource. And I know they have a lot of free videos too that are available and stuff, which is wonderful. Another really good resource for someone who's looking for more, I guess, formal classes or supplementation is Outschool. Are you familiar with Outschool?
I've heard of it, but I haven't explored it at all.
Okay. Yeah. It has kind of that same idea where they teach different classes, but they're based on kids' interest. So for example, I saw one the other day that they were teaching like elementary kids, coding and Minecraft and stuff like that. So they were learning like math through Minecraft.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that would be another thing too about with the unschooling. My youngest just turned 11 and she does not do math. You could not get her to sit down and do a math worksheet if your life depended on it. And she's very intelligent, but it's not interesting to her. Yeah. So I would rather let her explore how to learn different mathematical concepts through other things, like you're saying, coding. She really enjoys coding as well. Khan Academy has a great coding program that she does. And she was doing like 9th grade math. She was doing like algebra. My daughter, who can't tell me her math facts, was doing algebra because she was doing something she wanted to do. So she was willing to learn the thing.
Yeah. And you're so, I feel like you really touched on this important idea that a lot of times we think like, oh, my kid isn't good at math in particular. I don't know why math just has this really bad rap, but
Yeah.
you know, a lot of kids, I feel like they really struggle with math, and I'm like, it's not that they're struggling with math, it's just the way, well, one, the way that we're teaching math is completely bizarre. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
even useful or applicable to actual real life. And two, it's just, I feel like it's, you know, we teach it in this way that's boring, you know, like when it's not relevant, and the kids don't see the value in what they're learning, it makes it so difficult to learn. But when,
Yeah.
you know, when they are interested in it, they pick it up so quickly. And I've heard a lot of unschoolers say that, that, you know, they never do a worksheet with their children. They never have any formal math curriculum with them, but they see their kids learning how to multiply and divide and learning their math facts and fractions and all these other things through playing video games, for example.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting that when, you know, when we remove that force aspect from it and we give them freedom to kind of do what they love, they pick up the skills that they need along the way.
Yes, absolutely. Baking is one of the ways that my youngest learns math as well. You know, we're always, okay, well, if we double this recipe, what are we going to need? Because I definitely need 24 chocolate chip cookies. 12 is not going to cut it. And then she's like, okay, let's make more cookies, you know? So she's learning because she wants to. And then the same thing with my son too. I have a boy in the middle, and he will be 13 soon. And it was very difficult for him in school to sit still and to not just want to, you know, engage with his friends. And he was really always really good in school, but and he really loves adults.
Mm.
I'm not really certain where that came from. Usually kids are kind of shy from, you know, grown-up strangers, but not my son. He loves to give hugs, and he's just very much a lover. And so when he was still in the public school system, I worried about him the most, I think. And there was a couple of times where the adults in his life in school were not doing what they needed to do to stand up for him, which I felt was sending the wrong message.
Yeah.
But he learns a lot through being able to read. He really enjoys reading out loud. And I think one of his biggest strengths is he'll take his knowledge from the day and apply it by trying to teach it to his little sister.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And it's such a great way to reinforce your own learning. There's this quote that talks about that of like, you know, we learn best that what we can teach to others, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so true. I feel like even as a teacher, like I've had to have this deeper understanding of learning different concepts because I've had to teach them to children. And when you teach someone something, you know, you learn it so much better. So what an awesome opportunity for him to kind of really ingrain that learning into his own heart and mind. And then also be able to help his little sister too. That's awesome.
Yeah. And we were able to discover with him being home that, because before we never had any time to do anything, because my husband didn't get home from work until 7:00, which, you know, thank God is not the case anymore, but he was home late. They were always home late. It was always schoolwork. And then it was bedtime. We never had time to explore anything, but my son would always be on the video games. I mean, you know how kids are nowadays, and it was really having a negative impact on all of their behavior. But with the unschooling, we found out it's not necessarily just the video games, but this kid really likes to work with his hands, you know? So we bought him a toolbox.
Oh, cool.
And some wood, and now he just makes stuff.
Wow. That's awesome. That's really cool that he's able to have that like hands-on learning too. That is so important for kids to be able to have access to that, not just that like book knowledge, but being able to actually do real life stuff that matters to them.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 of my kids even started their own businesses.
Really?
They like to have spending money.
Can you share with us about the businesses that they started?
Sure. So my oldest got a job at the end of the last school year working with a woman who had her own business. It has to do with homeschooling, and she kind of like leads these recess classes that are like a health class designed recess classes. And so my oldest got certified in play fitness, and it was like the best. She loved it. And then the lady moved further away, and it was up to me to drive her 40 minutes away from the house for her to work for 2 hours and then go pick her up again. So I told her, I said, Kara, with the way, because I work from home as well, I said, now we have to figure something out that's going to fit into both of our schedules. We live in a neighborhood that's very, very close to other neighborhoods. And so my daughter, knowing that she needed to be able to rely on herself, started a babysitting business. And she not only babysits, she house sits and pet sits as well. And so now she walks. So everywhere that she's ever advertised her services for are places that she can either walk to or ride her bike to. And so now my 15-year-old's got, at any given time, has $100 in cash in her pocket because she did the thing herself.
That's interesting. And so she has this dog walking, house sitting, babysitting business. And what about your other child's business?
So Ethan will mow neighborhood lawns. And my brother had a lawnmower that he was not using, the push ones like from the 40s.
Yep.
Those things are so cool. And we live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of other houses, so our yards are all pretty tiny. So he pushes the lawnmower down the road with a weed whacker over his shoulder, and he'll weed whack and mow your front and backyard for $20.
Nice. Well, that's a pretty cool way to start getting experience and growing that entrepreneurial spirit. I have noticed that a lot of unschoolers tend to dive into these kind of entrepreneurial opportunities. And I truly believe that a lot of that desire to be an entrepreneur comes from having that unschooling experience, because no one else is forcing them to do anything or learn anything. Like they're really having to figure out what they like and what they want to do and how they want to spend their time. And it like creates that desire of like, oh, what can I do? How can I make money? How can I solve these problems that I'm having with, like my ride or, my time or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And then being in the public school system does not set anybody up for that anymore. No. I really think that we do kids a disservice by telling them that they are mere children until they're 18 years old. Because guess what? My 11-year-old is completely capable of doing her own laundry, washing the dishes. She can cook her own breakfast and lunch and pick up after herself, because that self-sufficiency and independence is just so fostered in this setting that I have full confidence that when my children leave the nest, that they are going to be contributors. Yeah. That they're going to be safe, that they're going to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah. And that is very important too, that we're constantly remembering, like, to prepare our children for the day that they are going to one day leave us, that they can have these valuable life skills that are so important. I mean, I know, at least for myself, I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to do laundry. I don't know how to do anything, when I graduated from high school. And it was challenging to have to learn how to adult, as an adult.
On the fly.
Yeah. And so that's definitely something I've tried to change too with my daughter. Like she's 7, but she, does the laundry, not all by herself, but having them be a part of our day-to-day life stuff. Like you mentioned, cooking, cleaning, laundry, all these different, buying groceries, It is incredible the amount of learning that our children are doing as we share life with them. As we go about our day and teaching them, about unit price and buying and coupons and baking, all these incredible, valuable life skills that kids in schools just don't have access to, you know?
Yeah. And when there is information that they need, that they come across that they need to acquire, then they have the ability to do so at that time when they're ready for it.
Yeah.
When they need it.
Absolutely.
So I'm not worried that my 9-year-old doesn't know what like 8 times 4 is, because to be completely honest with you, I'll probably count on my fingers for the rest of my life,
or just pull out your phone and use a calculator.
That always makes me laugh, as I tell my kids, you know, when I was in school, our teachers always said, you are not going to walk around with a calculator in your pocket.
Yes. But we do. We do. And it's so true. I feel like a lot of parents really get hung up on, especially with the math facts, like that's a big thing. And yes, you know, I think it is important for kids to be able to know their math facts. Of course, it makes certain aspects of life a lot easier when you can do stuff in your head. But we have tools now that can do a lot of these things for us. You know, like there's a reason why we don't use an abacus anymore, you know, like we have technology that is meant to help us do a lot of these certain things. And so if your kid's 9 and they can't do 9 times 4 in their head really easily, like we can teach them strategies like using their hands or whatever, or they can also use these other tools that we have now to be able to figure these things out. I mean, I don't know if anyone who's doing long division, I mean, like, do you?
No, math and I aren't friends. And that's okay. Yeah, because the time that the kids would be spent being forced to learn these things that they don't necessarily need at this time. And then imagine, so again, my daughter, not very good at math, but now because she can't do it and she's continually getting bad marks from her teacher, that's just going to eat away at her self-esteem.
Yeah.
That's going to eat away at how she feels about herself as a person. And that's not setting her up for later on in life. And just because one kid will have a strength in one place and a weakness in another place, but when we're constantly reminded of our weaknesses, it's that less and less likely we're really going to discover our strengths, because we're not going to believe that we have any.
Wow, that is a powerful statement and so true. So true, because we do in school, we're taught to focus on our weaknesses. We're taught to focus on the areas where we're struggling, and the areas that are difficult and challenging. And yes, it is helpful to challenge yourself.
Yes.
But we kind of completely ignore these areas that are our strengths. And those are the areas where we typically discover our passions and our interests. And so that's wonderful that your children are having that opportunity to focus on their strengths and to not have to stress about these other aspects that aren't useful or meaningful to them right now. I'm wondering, I know for a lot of people, unschooling is a completely foreign concept. And it definitely was for me a couple years ago as well. Did you have any concerns or fears about unschooling when you were first starting?
Honestly, for myself, no, but my husband did. And my oldest daughter did. So my oldest daughter really wants to be a part of the education system in some capacity as she gets older. And so for that desire, she feels that in order to bring that desire of hers to fruition, that she needs to be working really, really hard right now. And my husband, understandably so, doesn't want them to fall behind. But explaining and kind of having that conversation through that as they meet each phase and stages of their lives, different, like you said, challenges will come up, and then they'll have to level up.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is going to happen, and then they'll level up again. And it's up to us as parents to make sure that, it's not like because like I said, I work from home. It's not like I work in my office all day while my kids are doing whatever they want.
Right.
So we talk about it. We do make a plan as far as for our social studies class, sort of lessons that we do right now, I let my 11-year-old and 12-year-old decide how they wanted to learn about history, about American history. So now we're just picking people out of American history and learning about all these different events that happen in the same time period as like these different people. But being able to meet them where they are and then helping them grow from there instead of telling them where they need to be and forcing that growth. Is really what opened my husband's eyes. See, he was lucky enough. He went to a Waldorf school.
Oh, wow.
From 8th to 12th grade. And so
for people that don't know what Waldorf is, can you just explain a little bit more about that? Because I want to make sure that my listeners understand what you're talking about when you say Waldorf school.
Yes, absolutely. The Waldorf school system is so amazing. They keep their class sizes super, super small. And by small, I mean, there were 7 kids in my husband's graduating class. Okay. And because of that, the teachers and educators are so able to be hyper focused on each and every student that they are able to meet that student where they are and then bring them to the next place instead of, like I said, tell them where they have to be.
Yeah.
So in the Waldorf school system, I know with your kindergarten teacher is likely to be your teacher all the way up through the 12th grade. And it's that same integration of ages, because the older kids go to the younger kids. So it's basically unschooling in a private school setting.
That is a great way to describe it. I'm sorry, they're doing construction. Hold on one second.
Okay.
All right. Sorry guys for that brief interruption there. We are remodeling upstairs. And so I'm going to go ahead and just continue talking with Serena, and I will mute myself so that you can hear all the amazing things that she has to say. Okay. So anyway, so we were talking, you were sharing about your husband and the Waldorf school. So I'll let you go ahead and continue.
Yes. So after talking to him about his experience in school and how similar that is to how I want to educate our children, making that connection with him, that this is something that actual people do, that our kids would be okay, because he's okay. My husband, he is like a super genius. He's a nuclear engineer. And I was like, how do you think, like, you are so smart? I said, but you were taught and you were able to learn in a way that served you best. Because he always says, you know, this doesn't come naturally to me. It's something I find interesting, but I have to work really hard at it. I said, so see, because it was interesting and you had the opportunity to learn about it because you wanted to. And so then it was kind of like an aha moment for him. And now that's what we're doing with our children. And every once in a while, we have to kind of remind ourselves that even, like we said, even if they can't reiterate their math facts, doesn't mean that they're not, you know, have strengths in other places and going to be okay and be able to take care of themselves and support themselves and all of that.
Absolutely. You're totally right. And that's really cool that your husband has that background, you know, with that Waldorf school, and that he's able to to be an engineer, you got to be some kind of brilliant to be able to do that. So, so that's really cool that he's able to see firsthand that this kind of child-led learning process and having educational freedom in that sense and flexibility really has contributed to him being the kind of person that he is today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's another aspect about you too that I wanted to ask you about. So we do share something else in common, that we are not only both unschoolers, but we are also both believers in Jesus.
Yes.
And when I found it that in the unschooling community is that most of the people, at least from what I've observed, most of the people that are unschoolers typically tend to be people that are not Christians. And it's not a very typical homeschool style to be an unschooler as a Christian. And so I'm wondering, how does unschooling fit in with your faith?
Can I say something a little controversial?
Absolutely.
I feel like the reason why there might not be a lot of Christians unschooling is because unschooling, there aren't any rules. There's no specific guidelines. You are free. There's autonomy. You are free to do it on your own, and nobody's telling you what to do. And I feel like that scares a lot of Christians.
I absolutely agree. I think you're totally right. It is it is difficult when you think about removing rules, and that kind of legalistic aspect, and interacting with people in a way where there is this mutual respect and love and kindness and grace, and kind of removing that element of force and coercion and someone else kind of telling you what to do and what you can't do all the time.
Right. And I just don't think that is very Christian at all. I mean, that's not what Jesus came here for. He didn't come here to tell us, make sure you guys are really good at conforming so that you can fit into society, so that your life goes really, really smooth.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm like, another thing, we'll have to put that on a shirt or a mug somewhere. Yes. Jesus did not come to teach us to conform and to follow all the rules. Like he was a rebel. I mean, in a lot of ways, he was a rebel, and he went against the grain, and he focused on relationship and connection with people over any rule that anyone set up and said that he needed to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. And then again, with unschooling, you have that time to foster relationships. We are not born compassionate people. At least I don't think so. Well, maybe we're born that way, but being so susceptible and malleable at young ages, we tend to harden very quickly. And when I feel like keeping my kids home is going to keep them from feeling as if they need to conform, keep them from feeling as if they need to be something other than what they are. And then especially because we do have this push to stand out and to be so individualistic in our society right now that people are grasping at straws to be different, for so many different reasons, where we almost feel pressured to find what's unique about us, to share. Well, I'm different than you because I do such and such or have such and such. But at that young age, I didn't know what made me different until I'm 35 years old, until very, very recently. So I had to unlearn who I thought I was in order to learn about who I really am. And it has been a very arduous process. And so if I can help my kids to have the least amount of layers to have to remove later, I think that's what it's about.
Absolutely. I'm wondering though, I know as a Christian, that was one of the things I was thinking about was, the verse that talks about train up your child in the way they should go. How do you apply that as an unschooling family?
Well, above all, a relationship with Christ is most important. But to model that in the way that Jesus did. We have too many people and parents, especially, who try to, again, that the word force comes to mind, force our children into roles in the church, when really church is inside of us. And so we have to take care of what's inside of us, because that's where church is. That's where church happens. And so when we can take care of the stuff that's inside of us first is what Jesus calls us to do, because we have to be able to develop that relationship on free will, right? Like we were given. But if we try to force somebody into that relationship, it's not going to happen. So my husband and I, we model that. We talk about it with our children. They know what we believe, and we will live our lives in the way that God has called us to, and to model our lives for them.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, what, if anything, would you have done differently?
I would have started earlier.
I hear a lot of people say that. Everyone's like, oh, I wish I would have started earlier.
Yeah, like I said, we started at the end of 2019, and thankfully, right, that we were able to make the decision to homeschool before the pandemic made that decision for us. And so again, that freedom of decision there, that really made a big impact on how that feels for us. It was December of 2019 when the kids left for Christmas break. They never went back.
That's wonderful. And then what advice would you have for someone who's considering homeschooling and specifically unschooling?
I would tell everybody that it feels kind of scary at first. And at first it feels incomplete until that first time that your kid looks at you and pops up some information that you have no, like, when you're like, how the heck did you know that? You're like, oh, well, when I was doing this, and then you know what, that's so reassuring. My biggest piece of advice would be is be involved. Definitely be involved, know what your kids are doing, and like have an awareness of it without trying to force or use pressure, and to trust the process.
Those are some wonderful, wonderful pieces of advice. Thank you so much for sharing those with us. I want to try to wrap up quickly, and then I want to have you come back on another day when we can talk and they're not drilling right above my head.
Sure.
So just to kind of close out, how can people connect with you, Serena? I know you mentioned that you have a business. Do you want to share a little bit about your business, and then how people can connect with you, whether it's related to your business or to just connecting with you as another homeschooling, unschooling Christian mama?
Yeah, sure. So my business is called Life Between Weights. I'm a health and wellness advocate. And so the idea behind Life Between Weights is that it's not all about working out. Being healthy does not mean that you go to the gym. It's your life in between. It's everything. Health is all encompassing. So I work with stay-at-home moms specifically to create healthy and sustainable lifestyles so that they can, like we were saying, shed those layers of themselves that the world has packed on, and to really be able to see themselves for who they really are, so that they can truly feel alive again. And so homeschool and unschool people out there, if you find me on Facebook, I have a Facebook group. It's facebook.com/groups/life coach for moms. And if you find me through there, I do have another group in which I do kid yoga lessons via live video. And so if you want to do some yoga with your kiddos, you can find me over there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Serena. And thank you for joining me on my podcast today. It was an absolute pleasure being able to connect with you and talk with you. And I would like to thank all of my listeners as well for joining us for today's episode. I hope that it was as much of a blessing for you as it was for me. Remember that there are new episodes that are released every Tuesday, so make sure that you subscribe so you will not miss out on a single one. If you would like to continue to support me and my work, please share this episode with your friends and family, and consider donating to the links below. I hope that your day is as wonderful as you are, and I will see you next Tuesday. Join us next Tuesday on the Peaceful Worldschooling Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Harders, and I hope that your day is as wonderful as you are. If you like this video, please make sure you subscribe and click the bell so you will not miss out on a single episode.